Welcome back to the Talking Points podcast. Thank you to everybody who's watching over on YouTube. And if you are listening to us over on Spotify, make sure you follow the podcast and also give us a 5 stars rating. We have recently watched the British Grand Prix yesterday, and I'm joined today, as always, by Matt and Aldas. Tomo is still on his honeymoon, so he will not be with us, but he will be back shortly when he is finally returning to the UK. But the boys, British Grand Prix, what do we think of it? Rating out of 10.
Woo! Aldas, I'll let you go first.
To me, it was a 9. It was a brilliant race. I mean, obviously, except for the crash, I think it was a great race. It was exactly what we want to see in Formula 1. Good racing. I think what was actually really exciting is that I don't know about you guys, but even midway through, I didn't know who was going to win it. It looked like it's Leclerc. Could it be Hamilton? And then it turned out to be Sainz as well. I genuinely thought even at one point Perez could win it because the Red Bull was kind of the quicker car this weekend. So that's what we want, kind of the unexpected and the unknown right up until the final lap. So yeah, it was really exciting. I loved it. And again, Silverstone delivers bangers, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I think I've got to agree. Mine is also a 9 out of 10. I think for me, it was so close to being a 10 out of 10. If Zhou hadn't been caught up in that accident, the sort of the heart-stopping moment for that, I think potentially could have been 10 out of 10. But no doubt in my mind, this has been the best race of the season so far. It's really glad to see that, Zhou and everyone else involved, they've gotten away all fine. But yeah, like Aldas was mentioning, I mean, Aldas at one point, whilst watching the race yesterday, was screaming, thinking Alonso was going to be on the podium as well. Like, there's such a mix-up for the lead of the race. But yeah, for me, it's a 9 out of 10. But Hayden, what do you rate it?
Definitely 9 out of 10. I'm going to go 9.1 because I want to rate it a little bit higher than you guys. Is that allowed? No. I make up the rules. There's no rules with me.
Well, just remember the last time you did decimal points, how the comments rinsed you for that. So you've got to go round numbers here.
I dare you. 9.1 out of 10. It's weird how when we get a big lap 1 crash that's kind of scary and makes your heart drop for quite a while when you hear no news, that we get these really banger races. Like it happened, wasn't the Grosjean one insecure when... oh no, that was Bahrain. No, we're just going to forget that point. It doesn't make sense. Bottas, though, in Hungary was a big crash. And then obviously we had like an amazing race there. So, new winner as well, Carlos Sainz. But I think it definitely delivered. And we had a lot of battles at the front and a lot of wheel-to-wheel close racing. A lot of bit racing over the line, but... We'll get to that
we'll talk about
later on. But let's first of all break down that first lap because I think we were all sat there on backseat driver at the same time. And it was a very worrying moment for that first lap. And it's one of those things that I hate in this sport is when you just don't know. But I understand completely why nothing is shown or nothing is said because you don't want to say something and then it be wrong and give false hope. So I completely understand it, but it's always just horrible being in that moment. I don't know how you felt, Matt, but it was horrible for me.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of people, I think for us specifically, like us three specifically, and I do have to exclude Tomo here, we were lucky enough to go out to Bahrain to go view testing, and Alfa Romeo were kind enough to actually invite us out, and we got to interview not only Valtteri Bottas but Zhou Guanyu. And from both drivers, Zhou was like so nice to us, and like after our interview, some drivers want to go walk away straight away, whereas Zhou actually stayed with us and chatted us for ages. So as soon as we heard that Zhou was the one in the accident, who we saw just before it cut away, was upside down going into the gravel, all of us, like, you can see in backseat driver, we suddenly stop and, like, at first we were kind of thinking it was Bottas, and then it came over the radio that it was Zhou. That's when we all kind of, like, got a bit quieter because it's someone who we've actually got a bit more of a personal connection with. And I'm so glad now that like he got away scot-free. The photos afterwards, not only of him crashing, but there's a spectacular photo of the car in between the tyre barriers and the metal catch fence, and how he got away from that, like, from what I understand, pretty all right, is a miracle in itself, and it's a real true testament to the safety that Formula 1 have done. But yeah, I mean, I must applaud, like F1 now, being courteous to when there is a big crash, cutting away from it. Even I think to the crowd who were there, there were so many people filming turn 1 of the accident happening, but as soon as it does happen, I think there was one video I saw from someone at the very back, everyone then just puts their phones down straight away for their own courtesy, because you don't want to film that. Because before, a couple of years ago, everyone would want to idolize and look at like something like a crash or what have you, whereas now everyone knows the risks and knows something serious has gone on. But But yeah, turn one though, like you got Zhou crashing in. You've also got other drivers taking defensive lines, of like reacting to what's happening in front of them. So that's how we saw Albon and Vettel crash together. But Aldas, like, what was your thoughts going through seeing that big turn incident?
Well, first of all, like, very scary, because the thing that I saw first of all, like, straight away, is that he was already upside down well before the gravel. Like, that's actually really strange in terms, like, sometimes it happens like at the corner. This wasn't even at the corner. This was still on the straight. And I definitely agree on the fact that obviously, we've met Zhou, so we do have a bit more of a connection with the driver. When you meet someone, you actually, know them a little bit. It definitely hits a little bit different for sure. But yeah, glad he was okay. Very scary crash. It was quite actually interesting after the crash, and after, he actually spoke and put out a statement that he was actually fine. I mean, he wasn't, he was totally okay. He was like, yeah, I'm fit and ready for the next race. And that was kind of just like, it was just stunning, like, to actually see him like fine. But yeah, those pictures of him being stuck. I mean, I talked about, again, on Backseat Driver, if you haven't seen it, that, our live reaction, definitely go and check it out on the Veloce channel. But like, yeah, we were all just stunned. And like, I think it was more probably the claustrophobia for him, like massive traumatic crash. Like, you're doing somersaults as well, which is kind of, it's different when you're expecting the crash and you're kind of, facing the right way and you can see it coming, prepare for it. But when you're rolling, you have no like sense of perception of what's actually even happening. So yeah, that must have been massively scary in terms of just being trapped as well. So, because there might be a fire, you never know. So yeah, I think all of that kind of went in, but yeah, luckily he was okay and smiling. Even midway through the race, talking with Stefano Domenicali, we saw that on the broadcast. So yeah, just glad he's okay. I'm sure there's always lessons learned from crashes like this so that they don't happen in the future, or at least, you can never account. This was a freak accident. I've never really seen a car upside down before a corner, like actually on the straight. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be things to learn on the safety side, but at the same time, there's a lot that actually worked to make sure that he was okay. The gravel was kind of a double-edged sword the more I looked at it, in terms of like, it definitely slowed the car down because that's what it's meant to do, but that's also where it digs in as well. And there was actually a piece of footage I saw. The actual crash itself, it wasn't like massively high speed. It was just really kind of aggressive in terms of the way the car was rotating, which is what made it kind of really spectacular in a way. And that's why it was so, so scary when you kind of dug into the tires and the barrier. But yeah, I think all of the catch fencing, the tires and everything kind of did their jobs. The halo, of course, as well. So yeah, just glad to see him was okay. That's why to me it's not a 10 out of 10, because to me a crash it's never, that was good for the race. Like, it kind of, it made a few things for the race, but yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, everyone's okay, and that's the most important thing. But also, I think the roll hoop as well is something that I was a bit worried about, because that got almost sanded away completely if you saw the car afterwards. And I think that definitely needs to be looked at, because when we talk about the survival cell, there's actually like a L shape above the driver's head where they can't have their helmet above that, from the roll hoop to like the bottom of the chassis or something like that. And yeah, the fact that the roll hoop was just gone is, I think that needs to be looked at for sure by Alfa Romeo.
I think not just by Alfa Romeo, for like the whole teams in the sport, because Zhou, I can't remember how tall he is compared to us from when we did meet him, but you've got like the taller drivers of like Russell, Ocon, whose heads might be a little bit higher up in that halo, so it could become a little bit more worrying. But safety did its job. The halo, again, proving time and time again. It's weird, because I'll openly admit, at the time when it got introduced, I was like, this is an L. This is ugly. I don't like this. And it took me, up until Spa, I think, of that year, when the Charles Leclerc incident, to be like, okay, no, this was definitely needed. And it is crazy to think how many incidents have happened since the halo's introduction, where the halo has definitely, been a staple for maybe not saving a life in every single incident, but causing a lot of harm. It's definitely done its job time and time again. You think of Grosjean, you think of Hamilton, you think of the Formula 2. There's been a couple in Formula 2, Formula 3, other formulas where the halo has been introduced as well. And it's just crazy to see that since that introduction, how many times it has happened. And we're just all thankful that, these drivers can go racing and they can push as hard as they possibly can, and sometimes get it wrong and have these insane incidents, but come out of it, like Zhou, completely unscathed, and just be like, yeah, cool, I have no fractures, I just got a little checkup and everything's fine. Unfortunately, we move over to Alex Albon. He had to go to hospital, was airlifted. I don't think there was anything massively confirmed wrong with him, though, was it? It was just a checkup because of maybe the G-forces that his car picked up on the sensors. But it was a bit of a strange crash, because I think he got hit in the rear, then hit the wall in the front, and then bounced back across the track. And I think he collided with Sonoda. So maybe it was a case of like the safety structure took one hit and then took another hit in the same instant. Of course, as we know with these cars, they're only supposed to take the one blow, but thankfully everyone is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Albon as well, it's with his case, obviously it's, although it's sort of, as we sort of saying, it's at slow speed because the body's been thrown around in such different longitudinal G-force ways. So you've been hit one way, then hit the other way, and hit something like your body just can't really take that. And I think the only thing they're probably checking for is like a spinal sort of type of injury, because that's where your middle of your body is getting the maximum sort of lean on. But also just to touch on real quick in terms of like the safety aspect with like, is there a way that they can make this more safer? I don't think so, because there's certain things in place where they can't. Like the gravel trap did its job. It slowed down the guys. Even when Russell spun off and went into the gravel as well. I think he stopped in the gravel or just.
He was before. He was on the runoff.
Just before anyway. But at least then the gravel did its job of like stopping down of Zhou. And I think the issue of him going over the tire wall and then in between the gap, basically they cannot fix. If it was Tepro barriers or if it was a tire wall, they cannot fix that to the catch fence. And the reason for that is, let's say they were to like weld those two bits together. If then the driver then was to come down, they can't then easily remove the tires away to then, if there was like a fire or anything like that. So they have to have that option to be able to move stuff back at great force. But if it was welded down and then the driver was stuck there, then you kind of, that's the issue you kind of have. But I think with Zhou even flipping over, that's pretty much because his car went to the side, dug into the gravel, and then that's what's caused him then to flip over. But I think, how many retirements did we see at the beginning? Was it five?
I think five.
Yeah.
It was a very strange one, and I want to get your opinion on this, Aldas. Is George Russell, obviously great to see from a driver, the heroics, jumping straight out of the car and seeing a fellow competitor and check out that he's okay. But it's just such a shame for him that the car wasn't actually apparently that damaged. And he ran off, told the marshals to be like, don't touch the car, I'll be back. Came back, still hadn't touched the car, and then did something else, went off and then came back and it was on a truck. And he's just like, great. And at that point, the rules state that once you've had assistance, that you can't get back into the race, which just seems like such a shame when you do something like that. And I know rules are rules and unfortunately, maybe there shouldn't be exceptions for stuff like that, but you just kind of wish sometimes you were just like, just let him get back on with it. Let him do that extra lap, come back in, and then join the back of the pack,
I just love the way he kept his helmet on. He was like, I'm still ready. I'm ready to go, I think there might have actually been an issue with the car like that they found after the race in terms of the gearbox, and he also couldn't get it started. But yeah, it was just, I think just the crash in general. To be honest, actually, the more I've actually seen the original collision, I actually think that it might have been more on Gasly, because I think George Russell was kind of like protecting the outside, he was coming across. He already knew that Zhou was there, so it wasn't like swiping across. But I think Gasly was going for a disappearing gap because, yeah, it was a bit of it was a racing incident to me, in terms of the lap one. But yeah, it was just kind of crazy how such a small collision led to kind of a massive and spectacular rollover for the Alfa Romeo so early as well before the corner. But yeah, unlucky for George. I think he was obviously, British Grand Prix. George Russell, he obviously wants to get back into the race, but I also kind of understand if the car was damaged by the time it got on the lorry. Obviously, he didn't know about it. He just came back and just saw his car on the lorry, and he was like, oh no. So yeah, it was still quite funny to see him, arguing with Joe Bauer, like, are you sure though? I can get back in. We can fix this up. No problem. Bit of tape. That'll sort it out. But yeah, love George Russell, but it was just a bit unlucky. I think there might have been some damage.
Yeah, and I think like my view on it is like, he got out the car, and I can't think in recent times where someone's gotten out of the car, got back into the car, and been able to then continue doing the race with when it's been a red flag situation. Spain
last year undid his seatbelts. I don't know if he fully got out of the car, but he undid his seatbelts because it broke down.
Well, okay, in that case, then someone fully getting out the car then. But I think my take on it is like, if you get assistance, you kind of that's it written out. And also we all forget, like, it wasn't like he had damage like I think it was Ocon, like to the front right of his wheel. This was like the rear left, fully broken where the contact was. And I don't think it's fair to like really point blame at anyone, even if it was to Gasly or whomever it might. It was a racing incident where like we could say, oh, Gasly was in Russell's blind spot. Should have been Russell. He should have been paying more attention. Gasly saw an opening. He shouldn't have gone down. It's like, it's the beginning. It's literally, we haven't even got to the first corner yet. And there's so much going on. And I don't think it's fair to put any blame on anyone. And I think it's just like, I think it's just wrong timing for everyone where like there was a gap for Gasly to go. I think he was for it. I think Russell didn't think anyone was there because he was in his blind spot. We saw him checking the mirrors and couldn't see anyone there. He's right on it. But also there's like a millisecond as well. But yeah, I think like it was great for George to get out and just to make sure he's okay. I think any driver would do that. Or I would hope that any driver would do that, especially when you see a crash that sort of of that structure. But yeah, I thought it was funny him trying to like plead with the FIA to be like, oh come on, we can work it out. But like one thing we always got to remember though, like it's one thing for the driver to say to the marshals, don't touch my car, but also the marshals, like the driver is not their boss. They're being told something else by the race director, by the FIA. That's who they're controlled by. So regardless of what the driver says, that's why the marshals come over. They've got hand signal saying, are you okay with the thumbs up? Or I need to move you to the track, because their prerogative is not what the driver wants to do. Like if the driver tries to run across the track, they'll grab him and pull him off. So like, I know George is just trying to like get back in the race because it's his home Grand Prix, but the marshals did their job properly, and I don't think they should get any flack for it.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. It's just a shame that that it had to happen that way. Right, let's move away then from the first lap incident. I think we've discussed that quite well, and onto the restart and a little bit of information, because a lot of people were confused about the race restart and why it was happening as the qualifying order. And basically, because there was no one got to the second safety car line, which I think is like the apex of turn 2, whilst it was still green flag running, that means that the race sort of effectively completely restarts as like the qualifying order. So if they had got to that apex, then it would have been that order, or if there was a safety car or a virtual safety car, it would have been the order that happened whilst all those drivers crossed that line. But because they didn't, it goes back to what it was for qualifying. So Carlos Sainz, as Aldas kept on putting it yesterday, kept on getting flashbacks, using that F1 22 knowledge, and this time managed to hold on to it. But it was interesting, a great battle side by side. And then, of course, we had Sergio Perez having a little look, Charles Leclerc sending it into the loop. Everyone getting very close, and I think this is what we like to see with the Red Bull and the Ferraris really going for it. Matt, you're squirming a little bit. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know if there's so many sort of like chances Carlos Sainz had, so I'm trying to remember which one I'm remembering. If it's the one where we're talking about not turn 1, not turn 2, turn 3, before the RS straight, where is that where you're talking about where Charles sort of sent it? Do you mean?
Yeah, Charles sent it.
I don't think he sent it. Yeah. Well, no, he was already on the left-hand side, and Perez, I think, was the one who tried to send it, but then Charles was then kind of forced to move left, because obviously he couldn't go right to go into Perez. So I think it was more Perez being more aggressive and Charles just having to take somewhat avoiding action, but keeping it on track, basically, because you also got a massive sausage curb there, so he would have just like got beached otherwise. Yeah, I think Carlos Sainz got very lucky because, yeah, I predicted, it wasn't backseat driver, but I predicted that Max Verstappen was going to have him off the line, which he did in the first time. And the second time, he actually had a decent run. And then, that's when Perez kind of had a really good run on him as well. But I think then afterwards, though, I can't remember if it was this second race restart or the one further on after the safety car where we saw the Ferraris getting pushing off a little bit. Adas, help me out here. I can't remember. There's so many times the race restarted.
Yeah, that was between Perez. Yeah, that was Perez.
There's so much to go through. Fair.
In terms of the start, actually, it was just again a chaotic start. Obviously, Max kind of again almost did the business. He was. I like though that Sainz. He got that second chance, but he actually used it. He properly squeezed Verstappen into turn 1. Max actually take a little bit of grass there and couldn't really afford to kind of keep it flat, I don't think. So, yeah, Sainz definitely got his elbows out. When it comes to the loop and the crash, well, not really a crash, but just a little collision between Perez and Leclerc, I think it's because, Perez actually saw an opportunity to overtake Max, so, because Max was a little bit compromised, so Perez was offline, and then you had Leclerc getting a run on the inside as well, so it was like Perez was on the inside of Max, and then Leclerc was on the inside of Perez, so it was just kind of a weird kind of 3 or 2 into 1, didn't quite work out, but at the end of the day, Leclerc saw the gap, he saw the opportunity to overtake Sergio Perez, and he went for it. So, yeah, I don't really blame him, to be fair. I mean, the gap was there, but yeah, it's one of those really tight corners. That loop section really kind of tightens up right at the end. So yeah, I mean, it is what it was. He didn't actually he kind of got away with it though, to be honest, because it was only really the end play that he lost, which, you know, maybe cost him a tenth or two a lap. But yeah, I mean, I don't blame Leclerc, to be honest, but...
Oh, I definitely think it's more on I don't think Leclerc was going to go for it. I think if Sergio hadn't gone for the gap, I don't think Leclerc would have tried to dive down them as well. Like I on that one, I'm calling that on Perez for that. He came across quickly. Leclerc had to somewhat react, and it's one of those unexpected overtakes you're kind of forced to make. But I would say that's on Perez, because like Leclerc couldn't go any further left, and he's the one who made the contact on the front wing. So I would definitely say that's
the only thing I'll
Perez.
say is that it was similar. So with that corner, Leclerc wasn't even really like alongside Perez until very late. Like I think we talked about it in Saudi Arabia. I think it was it Albon and like Stroll. Like Albon was only it was only at the apex where he was side by side with Stroll, I think it was, and that's the problem with late dive bombs. You know, you want space, but at the end of the day, he wasn't alongside Perez the entire time. It was right at the end. So that's what makes it very tricky to judge in terms of should he have been given more space when he wasn't actually alongside until very, very late on. So to me, it was just kind of a lap one, even though it was lap two racing incident. But yeah, maybe, I mean, also at the same time, you're fighting for a championship. Is there a little bit of kind of like, do you need to hold back just a little bit? It's a long race. I don't know. But Leclerc at the time thought it was worth the gamble.
Yeah, indeed. He went for it and got a little bit of front end damage. And then we saw, of course, Carlos Sainz bottling it again, going over the runoff area. Just sort of a bit of a mistake. Going through the Maggots-Beckett section, ran a little bit wide, had a cut across. Verstappen then overtook him and got into the race win. And I know you were saying it a lot, Aldas, that he's just maybe not cut out for being... a world champion and pushing, and maybe you're right if he's making these mistakes. Of course, he did win the race today, but how many chances did he get at that, you know? So, yeah, it's a difficult one to say, but I do think at the same time, you are quite right that if you are fighting for this championship, you cannot keep on making mistakes like this.
I think what happened actually in that first stint is that Max was always within a second and a half. Now, the Red Bull was just the quicker car in the dry. All of the sessions, even in qualifying, the funny part is, you know, Carlos Sainz wasn't even the quickest in qualifying in terms of the raw race pace, because Verstappen, I think, would have had pole position had it not been for the yellow of Charles Leclerc. So, you know, quite interesting there in terms of one Ferrari spinning and kind of benefiting the other. So the Red Bull was just the quicker car. And through that first stint, Max was always on the back of Carlos. And I feel what happened there is Carlos he really kind of tried to go faster and faster, just open the tiles, almost overdrove just a tiny amount to kind of try and keep that gap and keep Max out of DRS range. And at the end of the day, I think the tires perhaps just let go a little bit, and that's why he lost it. But yeah, maybe it's a little bit in the car, but also a little bit in the driver as well. I mean, it's just not a good look either way. Regardless of whose fault it was, it's just not a good look. And yeah, giving the race lead to Max like that, you want to make him at least work for it. And yeah, but well, Carlos got a few breaks later on. So yeah, we'll talk about that now, I think.
Yeah, and I think like we also got to remember, like, he didn't really have it for long. And I don't want to jump too straight ahead, but like it felt like as soon as he got like handed over the victory again, it then kind of seemed to have like gone away with him quite quickly. So I think should we go on to the next one, which I kind of realised we just jumped ahead
Ferrari
straight
agent
that, so.
Yuki Tsunoda.
Yuki.
Helmet
I remember
Marco
we all just watched it on the. Yeah, we were all watching it on the timing screen and just seeing like, oh, they're both dropping down, and we kind of all worked it out. And then as soon as we saw the replay of Yuki like going for what is a proper dive into turn 2. Just couldn't get stopped in time, losing the rears, and then straight into Gasly. And it's just like...
That's just pure panic, by the way, because what happened there, and I've seen it so many times in terms of like, you think you're going for a move, and then you realize you're way too far behind, the door is closing, you're either going to shunt into them, or you're going to just lock up, and it's basically just a pure kind of instinct. He locks up, he loses the rear, and the rear actually touches Gasly, and yeah, he takes both of them out. And I can't believe it that not only does he take out the AlphaTauri, and technically he takes himself out when they were both in the points, but then also the debris also hurt Max Verstappen, and obviously that's what made Max slow just a few laps later. Now, what's amazing is I only realized this kind of today. Max didn't have a puncture. It was purely the amount of rear downforce that he lost that he thought he had a puncture. So he didn't actually need to come in, but that's why it was just as bad even when he came out with brand new tires. So yeah, I mean, a triple whammy. You take yourself out, your teammate out, and also, the leading driver at Red Bull. And what makes it even worse is that I think that race would have been absolutely comfortable for Max. Safety car or no safety car, he had the pace. I think it would have been an easy win for Max, and Yuki's gonna have to live with that. But yeah, I do not want to see the debrief with both Franz Tost, and I'm sure Helmut Marko would also definitely give Yuki a word as well. But once again, when it comes to Yuki, let's just move on. Let's just put that one in the books. Let's look ahead because
always wants to move away from Yuki. He hates the Yuki slander. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like it's like. It wasn't his intent, obviously, to affect Max's race. We've got to remember that, because anyone who went over that carbon fiber piece that was on that turn 2 could have affected anyone's race. And we were trying to figure out, like, the debris must have just gone up and just got spun around so much. He must have, like, damaged the floor or anything they've got. Because I think they were just saying it was, like, the rear downforce. And it wasn't a particular side, but we could see visually that, like, he just didn't have any sort of proper rear stability going around any of these slow speed corners. But it's a really weird one for Yuki to sort of just suddenly panic and do it. I mean, like, he started 2 spots behind Gasly, and they were running. They were running in the top 10 by that point, I think. And yeah, just like moves like that, you didn't really need to do, because you're just about to come on to like the next DRS straight, and it's just like, just need to be a bit more smarter with those things. But yeah, it was such a shame to see sort of Max just slowly sort of like losing the pace off it. But to be fair though, that then does make the race, I think, a bit better, because then we kept seeing the change of positioning. I mean, even we saw like Charles Leclerc keeping on the same pace of Sainz, even though he had a damaged front wing. So it's interesting to know how much he was losing per lap. Charles was in terms of performance, and if his front wing was fully working, then it would be all good. But Hayden, what's your Yuki take on it all?
Look, I'll take the positives out of it. That obviously it was his fault, but I'll take the positives out of it. That he's compared to last year, where he was miles off the pace of Gasly, and Gasly was like the hero of last season because he was just so far ahead of his teammate. Yuki has leveled the playing field, I think. I think in terms of pace-wise, he's on a level playing field. I think he's doing a great job. That they're quite close together. And, he had every right to go for that overtake on his teammate. He was quicker. He went for it, got it wrong, locked the rear, made contact. It's just something he's got to move on and learn with. Second season, I don't think it's, cause for concern to be like, he's a fraud, get him out of the sport or anything like that. It's nowhere near anywhere near that sort of level. He's just made a mistake. It happens, and I think he's performing quite well. Obviously, it's off the back of Canada as well, so he does need to make sure he has a good race in Austria. But yeah, it's just unfortunate for him. But then we move on. Carlos Sainz is now leading the race once again, but Charles Leclerc is gaining on him, and he's got front wing damage, so it's a bit of a strange one to be like, why is Charles so much quicker than Sainz? I thought at first that maybe Sainz was just keeping it under control. He was backing up Leclerc. He's got everything under control. He's leading this race. Leclerc's the only person who's really going to challenge him for it. He can maybe back him up into Lewis, let those two fight, drive on, win the race. Then they swapped positions because he just couldn't push the gap. When they told him to go faster, he couldn't. If he was under control, he would have been like, okay, I'll push a little bit more to get what you want. And then again, I'll hold that lap time and keep it comfortable there. And it didn't happen. So it's a very strange one that Sainz again just showing that maybe he isn't cut out for it, Matt. That, Charles Leclerc is the quicker of the Ferrari drivers.
Oh, totally. Because they could easily just compare like the 2 lap times. And obviously, Charles Leclerc had the advantage of DRS. But like, the issue is that like they're giving him like delta lap times to reach, and Charles Leclerc was basically saying, no, it needs to be smaller than it needs to be. I think it's like a 132 or whatever it was, and he's like, no, it needs to be more than that because like I can't get too close to him. And literally, I think they just if he was trying to back up Charles into Hamilton, I think that's just being a bad teammate. Like, you're in the middle of the season. Like, I know they later on they were like, you're free to fight, but like, you shouldn't just leave your teammate out like that. You need to be working smart together. And we've seen it before where if your teammate says, I've got more pace, then you can swap, give the opportunity to them and see what they've got. If they don't, then you can return the position a little bit later on. I know not every driver wants to do that, but they are needing to think of the constructors here, not just the drivers. And at the moment, Charles Leclerc is way ahead. And if you really wanted to go down the team orders route, which I don't think you should have this early on in the season, then you just need to be a bit more smarter with it. So I didn't like the sort of the narrative that if he was trying to back him up into it, I don't think that would be fair. I think Sainz is very much just thinking, oh no, I'm quick enough, but then quickly showed he wasn't. And then Leclerc was able to sort of take off a bit, really. But then ultimately, he went straight into the pits as soon as Hamilton was within sort of somewhat DRS zone of him. But yeah, Aldas, what do you think of it all? Because I think for me, I was getting really frustrated at the Ferrari strategy. I don't think they were fully on it this weekend, particularly with Leclerc. But I think in that scenario, I was a bit the team needs to kind of step in here. And I know we've talked about before, Sainz having this golden moment in Monaco where he stayed out when the team telling him to pit. Granted, but I think in this scenario, the team probably should have intervened a little bit more.
I think there was a lot of indecisiveness by Ferrari because it was very clear that Leclerc had more pace. I mean, again, I read somewhere by the race that it was about a tenth or two the front end plate damage. It wasn't too much, but at the same time, it was that tenth or two that just Leclerc was missing to really kind of overtake him because he was within DRS. He was right on the back of Sainz. But again, if he hadn't had that damage, he would have overtook Sainz, no doubt about it. And the problem is that they kind of kept it status quo for quite a few laps. I mean, we were watching for about 20 laps, Hamilton just catching. The gap went from 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. And it was there where I feel like there was a bit of indecisiveness because they clearly saw that Sainz obviously wanted to win the race. He was focusing on just himself at that point, which there's no, to me, there's no problem with that because obviously he wants to win. He feels like he's a championship contender still. But that's where Ferrari, I think, had a bit of an indecisiveness because by the time they did kind of put the team orders and say to Sainz, right, you've got to do a 31-2, to kind of make sure that we kind of cover Hamilton because very soon he's going to be in that undercut window. Even when he wasn't able to do that, he actually wasn't kind of super argumentative over the radio. He gave the position back, he gave the position to Leclerc the next lap. And to me, it's why didn't you do that 10 or 20 laps ago where Hamilton would have been 5 or 6 seconds back? At that point, if you kind of extrapolate the race, if they had that gap to Hamilton still, potentially they could have just double stacked or double stopped under the safety car when Ocon retired at the end of the race and maybe still got ahead of the Mercedes, or perhaps, Merc would have left Lewis out and on older tyres. So it was exactly what Charles said on the radio. It wasn't that Ferrari, it wasn't that he's not happy to see Sainz win. It's how much race time they lost. It was that middle portion of the race where everything just got congested with Hamilton catching up to them. And again, it wasn't as if Sainz, was super aggressive over the team radio, didn't want to let Leclerc through. But I feel like Ferrari now have to kind of have a bit of a sit down in terms of they need to be more decisive. If that was Jean Todt and, the old Ferrari regime, they are getting Sainz out of the way. He doesn't have enough pace. Hamilton is catching tenths a lap and, they're getting out of the way because Leclerc clearly has pace in hand. So in that kind of middle portion of the race, there was a lot of indecisiveness, with Ferrari, which I think has been their big weakness. There's no doubt about it. So that's going to be the big talking point. The race time that they lost, messing about, fighting with each other.
The big talking point, is that a feature we need to have now? The big talking point of the week. Right, let's move on. Esteban Ocon, DNF, brings out the safety car. And then, boys, how on earth do we break down these last few laps, the last 10 laps of racing? Because some of the best racing out on show, I think, for a while. There was also some parts which I personally don't agree with. We'll get to those bits later on. But let's talk about what happened up at the front. So we had Sainz battling with Leclerc. We had Perez battling with Leclerc. Lewis getting in that fight. Aldas believing that Alonso could get in that fight at some point.
To be
Matt
fair,
still,
even if
Matt's still
11th,
looking down, being like, "Where's Ricardo? Let's look at Ricardo." Don't worry about Ricardo.
Oh my
but
God,
it was. Let's quickly talk about strategy for Leclerc, because they decided obviously not to pit him, or he decided not to pit. I don't know who the call lies with there, whether it was the team that made that choice or he made that choice. I understand it to a certain extent, because if you do not pit and you lose track position, then you could set yourself back. But then at the same time, as we saw with hindsight, the soft tyres worked so much better. Although I do still think he was able to fight. Obviously, I think the race pace from the likes of the Mercedes, the Red Bull and the Ferrari, you're going to struggle against it. But of course, he kept the pace over the likes of Alonso and the rest of those guys. But it is a shame to lose out. Do you think it was the right call? Do you understand both ways? Or do you slam dunk go, should have pitted, Matt?
No, he should have pitted. Like, it was a safety car. They should have pitted. Like, that should have been their number one thing. Yes, there is talks about really good in hindsight to say, oh, he might have lost position on track or whatnot, but no, they should have pitted. Like, if he hadn't pitted, he would have had the, I think, proper pace to still be up there. And like we saw in the last laps, because he didn't have that much grip left in the hards, or basically everyone was on soft, so they had further grip. Like, for me, they should have pitted. Like, it's yet again, I think it's the strategy falls with Ferrari, and I think Leclerc is just following like the team orders basically, and then he's doing as he's told rather than trying to think of his own thing. And he can't just be like, oh, I'm going to box down, and then the team have to scramble. Like, the team should have known, and I think they know of, like, they were meant to do it. They did gamble of just keeping him out there to keep track position, and I just think it's the wrong one. But we saw some other teams, also having the issues of where they weren't. There's some people who were also staying out on hards. They were also bringing in people like Ricciardo, who just put on some softs to put on more softs, and like I think there's a few teams there just didn't have the correct strategy call. I think Mercedes had the great one. But like, yeah, I think Ferrari should have done that. Like, we were saying during the race, they should have done it. It wasn't a hindsight thought. They should have boxed him, and they didn't. But Aldous, what's your thoughts? Do you agree with that? They should have.
There's always a dilemma of being the lead driver, because it's almost like a lose-lose situation, because everyone can react to you. Like, potentially he comes in, and the really kind of difficult thing is that. Because I'm looking at the Pirelli information now, Hamilton only pitted for a brand new set of hards 4 or 5 laps before. So he was actually on very fresh tyres, but even then I think, Leclerc on soft, and obviously, they would have kept Hamilton out because he would have done the opposite. He has nothing to lose, really. He would have been in the lead of the British Grand Prix, defending for his life. But even then, if Leclerc was on brand new softs versus Hamilton on 5-lap hards, going for the end, even with that damage, I think that would have been super close. But, potentially I still think Leclerc would have overtook Hamilton in that situation. Obviously with Carlos Sainz, there's no ifs or buts. He was on, at the time, he only pitted on like lap 30 for his hard. So he definitely wanted to get that cheap pit stop. I think the problem again is that they couldn't actually double stop, because they didn't have enough of a gap between Leclerc and Sainz. And if they did double stack, then Hamilton would have definitely overtook Carlos Sainz. Now, all of these permutations are running. They're running 1-2 with Hamilton behind. Is it better to be safe and run 1-3? All of these things are going through their minds, and it is just... They did get it wrong again, ultimately. We did think, just do the safe option and put Leclerc on softs. Yes, you do lose track position, but even at the time, they still would have had, I think, about 18 or 17 laps of racing to go. Charles Leclerc with the pace he had, yes, a little bit of damage, but on fresh softs, I mean... I wouldn't put it past him to, overtake for the win. So, yeah, I think it's another kind of Ferrari fumble. I do understand a little bit why they kept him out, just kind of, potentially have Carlos Sainz as the rear gunner, because he still would have been ahead of Lewis Hamilton, but it clearly didn't work that way, because even then, Carlos Sainz would have had advantage over Leclerc in terms of pace. So they need to kind of, again, sit down and kind of think about the entire race in terms of going all the way back to the whole team orders thing, how much race time they lost then, and also the decisions they made during the safety car, because, yeah, this is... Very soon they're going to have to kind of, I think, just favour Leclerc, because what are they going to do? They need to win this championship, and Leclerc is very clearly the most likely one to do it. So, yeah, I feel sorry for Charles. It was very telling, though, after the race, that little talk that he had with Matteo Binotto, because I think that was a bit of a, Charles went over the team radio and he was like, yeah, I'm happy for Carlos, but he was really critical of the team. And I think Matteo Binotto was just doing a little bit of kind of, damage limitations, just saying, leave that for the debrief, just calm down a little bit. Don't say that sort of stuff over the radio, because it kind of makes the team look worse, and protecting the team is very important.
I did find that a bit weird, that was the first thing Binotto was kind of, well, this is what we're assuming, because we only just saw him with his little finger waggling towards him. I thought that was a bit weird to do that as soon as he got out the car. Like, if you've got stuff to say, don't say it in front of all like the press and like the broadcast team. I thought that was a bit of a weird thing to do.
No, that's the place to say it. Like, that's the place to say it. If he's come out
fuming getting out
publicly
the car.
and criticised the whole team, you need to come out publicly and criticise the driver and show the driver that he's getting a telling off, so that the whole team sees that and goes that it wasn't right. If Mattia goes, "Oh, well done, Charles," and acts like it's all calm, then the team's just going to be like, "Oh, so maybe the team manager's right. Like maybe the team manager believes that Charles was right, and we've all done a bad job and put us in a bad situation." So I think
that's
it
a bit
is
like
right
Toto
to go
Wolff with Mercedes, then basically.
Yeah, but it is right. You know, you have to go and, you know, sometimes you have to go and publicly call out if something's not gone right and something's, you know, somebody's dissing your team from the inside. You've got to go and call them out for it and be like, you know what, this isn't right. This is a team dynamic. We all work together. Everyone's working towards the same goal. No one's trying to sabotage you or anything like that. You need to get this team on your back. The last thing that Leclerc needs to do is piss off his team so that they'd go, do you know what, I'm not as motivated to work on your car in compared to Carlos Sainz. You know, that's how you don't want team morale down, especially when you're fighting for a championship. It's
And
all
especially when you're Ferrari. That is the one team with the amount of influence that they have in Italy as well, and like the media as well, the amount of pressure and scrutiny more than any other team, especially when they're in the title battle. You need to be very clever with the PR game. Of course he's fuming at the fact that how is he not even on the podium? Like, Leclerc was the quickest, after Verstappen had his issue, Leclerc was the quickest guy on the track. I mean, him and Lewis, I think, were trading purple sectors at one point. But how is he not even on the podium? So, of course, he's angry, but Mattia needs to just do right there and then, because the cameras, the mics are going to be, you know, on Leclerc straight away. And you could see his body language getting out the car. He was fuming. So I think it was the right thing to do by Mattia. But again, a big mistake by the team. And they need to analyze it because... yeah, it's just not good enough, basically.
It's just an interesting dynamic between the different team principals, because we've seen it quite a couple times now where Hamilton has complained on the radio about the car not being good, and then having Toto Wolff coming over the radio being like, "Yeah, this is a shit car. We're sorry, like it is a shit car." But it's just interesting where like. And I can understand it, what you were saying there, Hayden, of like, you know, because Ferrari is, yeah, it's different level of gravy. It's that's a new word for me, different level of gravy. Completely wrong way of saying it, but I understand what you mean.
It's two sayings put together.
It's two sayings put together. It's my new saying. But I understand it though, because yeah, Ferrari have this heritage, they have this ego to them, they have a representation of like we're all together as a team type of thing. Whereas with Mercedes, they're very much like it. Kind of thing, like they're just saying like, yep, it's shit, but now we got to just deal with it kind of thing. So it's interesting to see the different dynamics, because I don't think we would have ever seen like someone like Toto Wolff or even Christian Horner go up to a driver who's said something bad on the radio and gone and done that at the at Parc Ferme. But yeah, I just found that bit quite interesting.
Yeah,
I think it also makes a difference when you're the 8-time consecutive, you know, constructors champions, and you're Ferrari, whilst Ferrari is just fighting again for a world title. But
I think it's different when you're criticising a car versus a team. Everyone at Mercedes knows that car is a shitbox. They know it's not where they want it to be. That's Mercedes. They're not going to go, yeah, this car's fighting for 5th. Yeah, we're happy with that. You know, everyone in that team is a winner. They've been winning for the last 7-8 years. They know how to win. So they see that car and go, this is not where we want to be. So everyone agrees with what Lewis is saying. But if you go individually and start going, your team calls us shit, you're doing this as shit and all that, that's where you've got the issue. You're publicly picking out individuals and members of the team rather than being like, this car's shit, and then in a debrief going, we need to work on this. It's just a different kettle of fish.
I just like the thought. I just like the thought on the team radio be like, and Luke in strategy, and Deborah in finance, and I just going through all the people on the team radio.
It's like the opposite
Leave
of
Deborah in
Patreons.
finance
I'd like to thank my patrons, but instead it's like I like to hate on these people. Right, battling at the end. How do we break this down quickly so we don't talk on about forever with these incredible battles? We had Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, great battle.
Alonso
I think we had
in the
Schumacher.
mix.
Something happened with Alonso. Schumacher versus Verstappen fighting as well. I think those were like the key ones were really Nicholas Latifi dropping out the points once again. Big sad. But I think the racing on show, we'll briefly sum it up. The racing on show, I think, today, let's talk about that. Did we enjoy the racing? For me, there was a lot of good parts about it. There was a lot of parts that I personally don't disagree with. I know, Aldas, you have a different opinion on racing. And I think that's what it comes down to, really. It's not me saying, this is the rules, this is what you should do. It's my interpretation of the rules and how I like to race with other people and how I like other people to race with me. And I think it's the same for you, Aldas, that you maybe are a bit more aggressive and maybe a bit more like if somebody's aggressive to you, you don't mind it as much. Is that
I mean,
the right way
don't
to
get
say
me
it?
wrong. Do you know what it is about the because we're talking about, by the way, we're talking about the Verstappen and Schumacher battle going into Luffield, especially Max squeezing Schumacher off. Like
But also
in isolation,
Perez did a few times as well. Like there was a few.
Yeah, but
Perez
to be
on
fair,
Hamilton.
it wasn't like as bad as
Perez pushed Hamilton off into turn 3 and then was forced off by Leclerc, cut across the corner, forced Leclerc back off again, and then that's how Hamilton got through. So it's from both
the
sort
Perez
of Red
thing.
Bulls and Leclerc as well.
I don't know how that's not a 5-second penalty. The Perez thing to me is slam dunk. Like he came off the track, he literally forced Leclerc. Leclerc was actually doing, he was avoiding an accident because kind of Perez. And also when you're coming off the grass as well, you've got limited grip, so you're sliding a little bit. I actually don't know how Perez got away with that scot-free without a 5-second penalty. I think that would have been fair. The whole Verstappen and Schumacher thing, to me, like, again, in isolation, I don't like that. I don't like, drivers forcing off the track. But Max has always been driving to the rules that the FIA give him. And when it comes to driving to the rules that the FIA give you and what they allow, I can't hate what he's doing because, like, that's the standard the FIA set, and I'm more frustrated with them than anything else. And Max has been doing this for years and years, and he's still getting away with it, which means that he's not getting away with it, actually. He's just driving to the standard that is allowed in Formula 1. So, yeah, it's ultra aggressive, no doubt. Mick Schumacher, ultimately, he wasn't alongside far enough, and, Max did squeeze him out. I thought, again, with the rules that he's given, I thought that was a brilliant move by Max because he drove right to the limit, and that's kind of what he's been doing. So, but to be fair, it was still a good battle. It was still good to see Mick Schumacher kind of still fight. And I think actually the key for Mick, actually, really quickly in that race is that he was always attacking. This was probably the first weekend where he had, he had the pace over Magnussen, and he wasn't defending points. He was actually attacking and going for more, which I think is really good kind of, psychology-wise. So, yeah, and then the battle, I mean, we all went nuts when Hamilton did that double overtake. And then Perez got him back a few corners later. I thought that, except for the whole Perez coming off the track, I think that still should have been a 5-second. Apart from that, it was just scintillating stuff. It is what Formula 1 is all about, and it's what we want to see, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think I need to rewatch it, but I think them going into like the final set of corners, this is with Perez, Leclerc, and Hamilton. It kind of seemed a bit like obviously Perez went off. I don't know if that because he was kind of forced off a little bit by Leclerc. That's the bit I need to rewatch because then if Leclerc did push off Perez and immediately then Perez pushed off Leclerc and obviously they both lost out in it. But if that was the case, then I don't think a penalty is needed because then basically there's like, well, you've done this to me, so I'll do this to you. Because otherwise, then both should then get a penalty, if that makes sense. But as again, I need to rewatch it to see if that was the case or not. Because I know Perez did go off. Don't know if he was forced off, but that situation. Obviously, then Hamilton just got that amazing shot, getting 3 wide on that corner and going straight through. And I think also we've got to remember, like, Silverstone, this is truly shown how great this track is in terms of racing. I love that last sector there because it always has, you have different lines there. But then with Hamilton and Schumacher, you got to remember as well that, and this is not me defending Verstappen. I'm with Hayden here that if you're pushing someone off, that I think that's not clean racing. It shouldn't be like, although it's happened before and he gets away with it, you should hold yourself to a higher standard. You shouldn't. They need to keep it fair. And that's why they always say like if you do like an overtake, like that's why they've now let the drivers have do an illegal overtake. They say their corner cut or something like that. It's up to the drivers to give back that position rather than having to enforce it. So I think here, Verstappen, I think he went too far with it. He was really aggressively defending when he didn't have the pace. Obviously, he was also driving different lines due to him not having that rear downforce. So it could have been malicious defending. It could have easily also just been him not having control of the car. Either way, though, whatever
think it's
happens,
just Max, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's consistent with what we've seen from him.
As I said,
how many times we've seen it through the years? Like,
True.
Max Verstappen pushes people off.
But
it's
I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, and I'm not defending Max here. I'm just saying that
classic.
Well, no, shut up. Absolutely not. I'm saying. I'm saying, regardless if it was Max deliberately doing it or not deliberately doing it, I'm still with Hayden saying that shouldn't have happened because he pushed Schumacher off. That's my result. I'm just saying it might not have been actually his intent because he didn't have the control of the rear and he was trying to defend and therefore his car was compromised. Regardless of all of that, I don't think that was fair. I think Schumacher should have been given that place because he had more pace and I think it wasn't just the one time he got pushed off as well. So that's my stance on it. So
it is a fair point. No, it is a fair point. If it was the first time this had ever happened for Max Verstappen, but as we've seen it so many times throughout the years, Max Verstappen, it's just facts. You can argue all you want that it's British bias. It's just facts that he pushes people off the track. Like, come on. You can't argue.
It's the FIA's fault. Like, that's what we were.
No, 100%. I agree with you there. I agree with you there. And I was hoping with new race directors coming in this year that something would have happened, and it just didn't again. And the fact that it didn't happen, like I think the Perez one, I agree. If he's pushed off again and then Leclerc's pushed off and then sort of back and forth with each other, I can understand why that one is dismissed. Okay, I would say penalise them both, and we've got Hamilton and Alonso on the podium. Me and Aldas would be very happy.
Very happy with that.
In reality, I think it was an even one. But the Verstappen one, every single time that Schumacher had a bit of a run off the track. Even in the final corner, it was squeezing over that sausage curb that Schumacher had to back out. Like, they were alongside. And I feel like, as Alonso said, all the time, you have to leave the space. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying if somebody attacks you, you just have to leave the door wide open and say, here you go. You leave enough for two wheels on the tarmac. Once you've done that, that's enough space. You've squeezed them, yes, but you have still left them enough space to still be on the track. If they run off wide and you've left that space, that's on them, okay? But all the time, you have to leave a little bit of space just to keep them on the track, and it just never happens. And that's why I feel like something, for me personally, needs to be done. But again, this is all perspective. This is how I like to be raced against with other people, whether it's karting, whether it's online, and I race other people like that as well. That's just my personal perspective. Right. We've been going on for nearly an hour here, but let's get into the head-to-heads, okay? We've wrapped up. Carlos Sainz won the race. New race winner. I think, should we talk about... Yeah. We can talk about him in the Ferrari. We'll get into that in the Ferrari head-to-head. So let's talk about Ferrari. Carlos Sainz winner. I think we're all happy for him, 100%. I'm going to go in with my first one straight away, and then I'll throw it to you boys. But I think Leclerc, was Sainz beat him in qualifying, got his first pole position, and I'd love to be like, you know, pat on the back, let's praise Sainz, let's give it to him because he got the job done today. But Leclerc just showed the better pace. The strategy didn't work out for him, but I back the safety car strategy, in all fairness. I would make the same call as well, and I would make the same call again, because it's like Abu Dhabi last year. If you're in the lead, you don't want to give up that position because, you know, it's harder to re-overtake than it is to defend. Like, you can defend that position, and it's always going to be harder to come back through the field. So I back what happened, and for me, Charles Leclerc takes it.
Yeah, I think I've got to go to I've got to go Sainz with that one. Really happy for him. Good that he's finally got the first win. I wonder now if this is going to be the turning point of his confidence. You know, like, he's now got like that one race win he needed to have with Ferrari. It's been a slow rise, you know, him getting his first podium, I think, with McLaren, and then getting a second, and now he's actually got the full race win. And so hopefully this might be a turning point. However, like, we are needing to see a bit more from him. But yeah, it's a shame for Leclerc. I think the team sort of let him down with that one today. But for me, it's easily got to go to Sainz.
For me, it's going to go to Leclerc because, and it's actually a really conflicting one because it was a weird weekend by Sainz and Ferrari. Like, this was not, in a weird way, I don't think this was a great race by Sainz. I mean, he fumbled it at the beginning and kind of got away with it because there was a second restart. He then went wide again. He then was actually told to move aside for his teammate. And then obviously the strategy kind of came to him at the end. And it was, he got it done. That's all that matters for him. He's not going to care how this race panned out because he needed this win. And I think it has been coming. I think even Canada, if he had a bit more grip kind of coming off the hairpin, he was challenging for that race win against Max Verstappen at the end. So this has been kind of rolling the ball of momentum. And this was a big one to kind of just get that box ticked. He's a race winner now. I think 150 Grand Prix starts for him. So yeah, finally he is a Grand Prix winner. That's really important. But Leclerc had the pace the entire time in the race. And I feel like I don't know how I'm not able to give it to Sainz because he was told to move aside for his teammate because of pace. So yeah, but again, doesn't matter how it happened. It did happen. But even on a weekend where they won the race, I don't think this was a great weekend by Ferrari. I mean, look how many points Red Bull dropped. Look at where the championship leader is. And Charles Leclerc is only fourth. So in a weird way, it's a Ferrari win, but not a great weekend for them.
I don't know what you're on about, Alda, saying that science is not going to care, that he got the job done. That's all he needs to do. He's going to be fuming he didn't win the talking points head-to-head this week. Absolutely livid. Red Bull Racing now,
He's going to be in
Sergio
the
Perez.
DMs.
The one
Yeah,
time he
he's
can
gonna be straight
potentially
in the
the one time he potentially can win a head-to-head, and you still don't give it to him.
Well, he should have been quicker driver then, shouldn't he?
Exactly that, yeah.
Right, Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing. Max outqualified Sergio. Sergio got the damage, came back through the field, then Max got damage, was battling down in 7th. This is a tough one for me. I think
I'm glad you're going first, mate.
I think Verstappen was the quicker driver on the weekend, but then the racing standards for me at the end just kind of ruins it. But the quicker driver wins the head-to-head, but I'm not happy with the racing standards at the end, but was the better driver over the weekend. It was just unfortunate. Had he not had that damage, he would have won the race, clearly. So for me, I'll go Verstappen.
Yes, but he didn't win the race, so I've got to go to Perez with this one. Yes, he was 5/10 off in quali. However, this is a scenario where he did then get the job done. He came from 4th to 2nd and was like, you know, he wasn't far off Sainz at the very end and like having some great battles out there. I do think he was more aggressive towards the beginning of the race. But as I said, like, this is a scenario where he did get the job done. He did what he had to do. It's a shame about qualifying. I think that's where he's starting to lack a little bit with qualifying. That's where, like, you know, he's not getting his true pace in. However, he needed a decent result, get some points in the table, and like coming home with P2, bloody great for the team, especially as, like, you know, Verstappen, he's batting for like P7 and P8. So for me, it's got to go to Perez.
Yeah, this one's, by the way, really close for me because it's such a difficult one to judge. Like, Max didn't do anything wrong in terms of pace, but he just got unlucky. I am just going to give it to Sergio Perez, like, really, you know, close, purely on the comeback drive because he still needed to get it done, and he did. He got all the way up to, I think, P4, just behind kind of the top 3 guys, and then the safety car helped him out. There's no doubt about it. But again, he used the pace of the car. Maybe, you know, should have got a 5-second penalty at the end, but, you know, he made it work and he kind of got away with it. Maybe he did get forced off, I don't know, but it was the actual pace in the race that I was really impressed by Perez. He kind of got back after that early collision with Leclerc, got it to P2, and it's super tight. Max didn't actually do anything wrong. He would have won the race comfortably, but yeah, because of some of the things at the end, I'm just going to give it to Checo.
From one difficult team to an easy one, let's move over to Mercedes. It's Lewis Hamilton. I don't think you can, even as much as Aldas might want to argue the George Russell because of the bias. But
I've got an argument.
We'll get to that in a sec.
Definitely.
Okay, then I'll come to you next. But Lewis Hamilton, you know, it's unfortunate for George. It's one of those, we have this so many times when we do the head-to-heads. A driver doesn't have anything to go by because of a lap 1 incident, and you have to go by qualifying. Lewis Hamilton out-qualified George Russell, and that's all I can go on at the end of the day. So I'm going to give it to Lewis.
Yeah.
Right, Aldas, argument. Oh, okay. I think let's hear this argument from Aldas first. Sorry.
Literally, I was just going to throw it straight to Aldas just because we're going. Just because we're going be you, me, and Aldas. So literally, mine. As I said, yeah, we don't need to be on it too much longer because there's not much to go off. But yeah, mine's easy. Obviously, going to be Hamilton. Like, it's simple as. Like, there's no question about it. So good luck, Aldas.
There is no doubt in my mind. George Russell stopped on the side of the track to help Zhou out. And if he got back in the car and got back to the pit lane, he would have finished top 5 from the back of the grid. There is no doubt about it. It's just, you can't even argue against it. He is top 5 in every single race in 2022. So, mate, the maths, it all adds up. He would have finished top 5 from the back. And yeah. No.
Well, at least maybe I don't know if this stat is correct, but maybe every race he's finished, he's been in the top 5. So maybe you can sort of clutch straws that way.
Exactly, it's still going. But no, even though I do genuinely think if he actually did get back to the pits, he would have still got into some good points. But no, it's got to be Lewis. His pace was ridiculous. Like, the fact that we were all sitting and thinking, is he actually got the pace to win the race? I think just tells you everything about his performance. The British crowd, no doubt, gave him a 10th or 2 as well. It's got to be Lewis. And this is now, again, I talked about, I think, Carlos Sainz getting the ball rolling. Lewis getting a bit of momentum as well after Canada. George had the beginning of the season kind of locked down when they were, trying different setups. Lewis wasn't comfortable. Again, I don't know how Austria is going to be. There's a few kind of slower corners there, so we'll see. But certainly at Silverstone, Lewis was just, He was incredible. I don't know what else to say. His pace was unbelievable, and the fact that he gave us like a chance of him seeing to actually win the British Grand Prix for what is it, a 9th time? Yeah, just that alone, he's definitely my driver.
So close. So I was gutted. It's good though for a Mercedes fan that we're now no longer salty.
That's wearing a Ferrari shirt.
Not on the podium. Yeah, wearing the Ferrari shirt. We're now salty that he didn't win the race. So it's obviously things are moving in the right direction. Alpine, and for me,
easy again.
It's
nice
gotta
easy.
be Fernando. Yeah, I mean, for me, Fernando's been unreal this season. I think Ocon, I say this every single time, I don't think Ocon's doing a bad job. I don't think he's a bad driver. I don't think he's at a place where it's like, should he be in F1? 100% he should be in F1. But is he one of the greats? No. But can he get the job done? Yes. But Fernando Alonso is always going to give you that little bit extra. He managed to bag P5 today in qualifying. He got the car P7. Ocon was out in P15. So it's a very easy decision. It's a shame for Ocon he got that front suspension damage. I don't know how much they managed to fix it completely before he went out running again, whether there was a slight issue there, but I think everything was running fine. And again, unfortunately, he did get the engine issue, because otherwise maybe it could have been more points and a double points finish for Alpine. Things I think were looking good. Yeah, because he was ahead of Verstappen, so I think it could have been a P7.
Yeah, he would have finished P7 in the end.
But it's Alonso, plain and simple. I think he did a really good job today.
Yeah, it's good for me. It's Alonso as well. It is a shame for Ocon because he the turn 1 incident, he didn't do anything wrong, and I think it was his front right had damage, and they obviously were able to fix it in the pit lane whilst the red flag session was still on. And I don't know if those two issues were related. It might have been. It sounded like he just didn't have any drive left. But whatever it could be,
it was a fuel pump issue.
So even then though, like the vibrations from what happened could have jolted something inside or whatever it could be. But yeah, it's a shame. But also even with qualifying, although he qualified P15, I think it was, we do got to remember in Q2, after 4 or 5 minutes in, then it started properly raining down. So that's why we saw a big mix up in the grid. I mean, that explains how Latifi
Get the lap in early.
Yeah, well, no, but it's
yeah, when you
Sorry, who watched qualifying? Oh, that's it. You didn't watch it. That's fine. That's how
I was racing at the time, mate. Doing the business.
Yeah, you fake F1 fan. But that explains, how Latifi got to P10, and it's obviously Ocon is faster than Latifi.
Not on pace alone from Latifi. Are you telling me that Latifi gets P10?
Yeah, exactly.
From pace alone.
Yeah, exactly. So Aldos, you can make all the jokes you want, but I'm also just saying what it is. I know you're forgetting what's going on because you didn't watch it. So you do have to bear that in mind. But yeah, obviously Alonso, great job today, and I know Aldos was properly cheering on, thinking gonna get a podium. He wasn't, but it was still fun though, nevertheless, to see him at the end of that battle. So yeah, for me, it's got to go Alonso.
Yeah, you can never take your eyes off Fernando. I say it all the time, whether you love or you hate him, he is box office, and he was fighting. He was just hanging on to that pack, almost waiting for things to kick off. But yeah, a really good race by him. They got a little bit lucky, though, because McLaren fumbled the pit stops a little bit. Alonso pitted on lap 39. Norris pitted on a lap later. And although he did come out ahead of Fernando, that one lap of tyre warm-up actually meant that Fernando actually overtook him on the track. So I haven't actually seen that overtake yet, so I want to see that. But yeah, either way, he would have still been in the points. Unlucky for Alpine, though, with Ocon, he still would have been P7. A double point score, that would have been good for the team. But yeah, Alonso, after the kind of shaky start, to the beginning of the season, sometimes with bad luck, sometimes with his own, weaving on the final lap against Bottas. This was just a solid race from start to finish. Classic Alonso, no mistakes, and he was pressuring Norris all the way. That's why he put that pressure on McLaren. He put that pressure on Norris, and yeah, it was another good race from Fernando, and I think he scored points in the last 5 races or so. So nice little run of form by him as well.
Closing up to Ocon in the championship. Magic Alonso, as that Spanish commentary calls him. Good old Magic Alonso. Right, McLaren, Mercedes. I think another easy one. Lando quicker in qualifying. And then Lando's up in P6 in the race. And you've got Ricciardo down in 13th in the race. So it's a big difference. Lando, it's home Grand Prix. I think really good for him. Good for McLaren as well to be in that fight again. Yeah, okay, there was that shot that they were all fighting for the podium. I think, yeah, there was always a chance that McLaren could be on the podium. All it took is one mistake up front, and you know how Lewis gained on the two drivers through a little mix-up between those two. Could have easily happened where one driver could just get that clean sweep and go through. It could have happened. It's just good to see McLaren back in the fight from where we saw them last time. But yeah, it's a simple one once again, Lando Norris. So now I'm going to hand over to Matt to hear all the excuses about what happened to Daniel Ricciardo during that race.
Well, no, I've got to give it to Lando as well. I don't think McLaren were in a position to get on the podium. It would have been in terms of pace. They weren't quick enough to get onto the podium.
On Ricciardo's side, Lando maybe, but Ricciardo's side they weren't.
Well, yeah, Ricciardo had a DRS issue, so.
Here he comes out.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, the one strand I've said throughout all of this is the McLaren strategy makes no sense. I don't get why they boxed him again under the safety car, because he'd only been on the soft for 3 laps by that point, and they brought him in to go on softs again. So he could have made up track position. It makes no sense.
But he was on the safety car. He was never going to overtake anyone ahead of him, and he was never going to get overtaken. So you might as well just go on to another set of fresh softs to be, on a brand new set like everybody else was.
He was. No. He would have jumped up, I think, 2 positions.
Because he was a lap down and the others weren't. He was the first driver to be lapped because he was just behind. So he was the first one to be lapped. He would never have got the others. So there was no chance to gain, but there was also no chance to lose.
Well, still didn't have DRS, so couldn't keep up. Yeah, obviously got to go.
Because he wasn't close enough to anyone to get DRS.
I know you guys are just fishing here. But also
we nearly got him.
Sorry.
We nearly got him.
I know, but also just take a step back, because I'm not bitching or joking when you guys having your piece. Just take a step back a little bit. Come on.
I haven't said anything,
mate. You were kicking off
the one pushing,
mate. You were the one kicking off when we were talking about Ocon, and you didn't even watch qualifying. So you think, just because rain comes down, because I think basically what I was saying is so many people lost out in qualifying, including Ocon, including Ricciardo, including loads of drivers, and Aldas, you were oh yeah, but Sainz managed to get up in P4. That's also not how rain works. Not all rain falls in Silverstone at once. It does come on from one section of the track to the other. But yeah, as I said,
get the lap in early.
Yeah, they did. It's also called a drying track. Have you?
How is it drying traffic? How is it a drying traffic? It rains more as the session progresses.
You have a drying track, and rain doesn't just fall onto the circuit all at once. You bloody idiot! It comes on from the side. I swear to God, Aldas, you are really thick sometimes. But yeah, it's going to Lando.
This is brilliant. I love this.
It's going. No,
Ricciardo would have been on pole.
No, I'm not even saying that. But you're also dismissing Ocon and other drivers, and you literally even didn't even watch qualifying. So you're just coming in with nonsense. So I'm sorry, but yeah, Lando obviously was the quickest driver here. But mate, pipe down a little bit, Jesus.
Matt is literally losing it. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's Lando. Bad weekend by Daniel. Whatever happened in qualifying. The race was not good in terms of the pace. The DRS, what happened? I don't actually know what happened with that, but yeah, it was just the pace that was very worrying in terms of the race. I did see the video that he put out on their Twitter, and he was just yeah, the pace was not great. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I think it's just all mental now. It looked like there was maybe a bit of momentum, after he beat Lando, I think 2 races in a row. I think he might have beaten him in Baku and also Canada, but yeah, this was just a really bad race by him. And as far as Lando, a little bit unlucky actually. Again with McLaren, they kind of fumbled it. I don't know why they pitted him a lap later compared to Alonso. Just pit him immediately. Maybe he got caught out with where the safety car was, but I don't think so, because they were behind obviously Lewis and Carlos. But yeah, it's going to be interesting who actually gets that 4th place in the constructors between McLaren and Alpine. So if Alpine, again, they could have scored double points with Alonso and Ocon, so it's going to be, I think that's going to be the really big fight in the midfield. But yeah, Ricciardo definitely needs to step it up.
Right, let's move away from fishing with Matt and getting him angry. Let's calm him down a little bit. Let's move over to Haas.
I've got a full ball.
Mick Schumacher, Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen out-qualified Schumacher, but Schumacher, great race, came back, kept it clean. And then even fighting, it wasn't just he lucked his way through strategy, worked his way back through the field. Yeah, okay, DNFs, but you need that bit of luck sometimes as a driver to get yourself in a good position, and he worked with that. And he was even attacking Max Verstappen, and it should have been P7 had he not been forced off the road. So for me, for the first time this season, I'm giving it to Mick Schumacher. Does that mean that he's taken off Fraud Watch? No. But this is a great chance for him to build from this momentum. And, for me, I was a big fan of Michael Schumacher growing up, and I would love to see Mick, replicate and build up that name. But at the moment, it's not happening. But there's a little bit of hope there. So it's a good result, and hopefully he can carry this on.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got to give it to Mick as well.
Unfortunately,
yeah,
unfortunately,
you
sounds so sad.
Yeah, well, my views on him. I don't think he's worthy enough anymore for the F1 seat. He also got caught out in qualifying with the rain. Shock! I'm actually defending him
everyone.
here.
It rained for everyone. Stop bringing the rain excuse. It's not like it just rained for one driver. It rained for everyone.
You're saying it like they all came out at the exact same time and the rain was at
They're
the exact
all on
same
the track
spot for everyone.
at the same
oh my
time.
god!
When you
oh
do
my god! I'm
qualifying
getting
in the rain, you do lap after lap after lap. You don't do a hot lap,
a cloud
then a slow
over
lap.
Ricardo the
You do
entire
lap after lap after lap.
You do a push lap and then an out lap and then an in lap and then you see.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Not in the rain.
That's what happened
Not
with
in the rain.
No, you don't. Not in the rain. You do a lap, then you do another lap, then you do another lap. You build it up.
This was in Q1. This is in Q1.
Yes.
So it wasn't fully raining at that point, and then it started raining where they couldn't improve on their lap time.
Q1.
Okay,
you said I did not watch
Q1 was the
qualifying.
session where it actually got quicker. Q2 was the session. Well, did you watch qualifying? Because Q2 was the session where it got wetter.
Either way, I'm giving it to Mick Schumacher. Let's just move on because we got to rattle on. We've been going for an hour and 10 minutes now. I'm actually late for something else now, so let's carry it on.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher as well. First weekend where he actually properly had the pace over Magnussen. I mean, he was even behind K-Mag at one point in the race, but purely got ahead of him, which is great to see. Again, this is kind of where his season has actually started, 10 races into the season. So yeah, I still think he's massively in trouble. He's definitely not off Fraud Watch. He's got to back this up now, but yeah, it's a very good and very positive result. And again, I talk about he was attacking at the end. He wasn't defending and he wasn't kind of, playing it safe. He was trying to attack and have a positive mindset to maybe even get more points, which I think is a good sign. Because I know he has pace. It's just getting it all together. So really good result by him and the team. And it takes a huge amount of pressure, both in terms of the media, the fans, and also in the team as well. Some positivity on his side of the garage is very good.
Right, let's move on. Aston Martin. Sebastian Vettel, cracking race for me. Weird situation with the strategy pitting really early, but it worked out for him, an absolute treat. I think it was brilliant. And then to the point that when Verstappen comes out of the pits and you've got Sebastian Vettel overtaking Max Verstappen around the outside of turn 3, inside of turn 4, incredible to see. I think a really good weekend for him just to sort of get back into the points, because I am worried about Aston Martin. I do think that with these upgrades that Williams have brought and Albon's car, Albon, there was a mess up in qualifying that he had. For some reason, the team told him to slow down, which we've already discussed in the rain. You just do laps. You don't do a cool down lap because you lose tyre temperature. So it was a weird situation for him that they did that, but the practice times that Williams did look competitive in the midfield. So I am worried that Aston Martin are going to be the worst car in the field. For Lance, again, it's a P11, it's 0 points. Something happens, you gain a point, but Sebastian Vettel, the better driver, was able to fight in the midfield and just had a really strong race. So it's an easy one.
Yeah, same again. I don't think you need to touch more to on. I think you said everything there. Basically, it's a shame it will happen in lap 1. Glad that they were able to sort of rectify the problem quite quickly. But then, yeah, it's for that is same as you, Hayden. It's easy choice.
Yeah, great race by Seb. Also, shout out to having that run in his Williams FW14B before the race. That was just amazing. And he was giving it some as well, which I like to see. He wasn't just doing demo laps. He was properly going for some quick runs. And clearly that helped in the race. I mean, it was amazing to see him battle with Max Verstappen. We were cheering Seb, which was awesome to see, the guy in the slower car. So yeah, great. I mean, another great, in terms of execution of the strategy by Seb, he was put on a scrub set of tyres, took it all the way to the safety car, kind of waiting for a safety car, and it panned out. And yeah, he scored points again, which is, again, I think, mostly down to Seb, because that car seems very inconsistent. Some weekends it's like in that midfield, and some weekends it's not. So yeah, good result by Seb in kind of the team's home race as well. Obviously, their factories are just across the road. So yeah, good to bring back some points.
Williams now, and go Latifi, not only out-qualifying his teammate who had a completely upgraded car, the better car, also getting into Q3 and then going one better than that and being 20 seconds off the pace in Q3. That is mind-blowing, and that just shows that you are the GOAT of this sport. Unfortunately, you know, the Williams that he is driving, worst car on the grid, it was always going to be difficult for him to get points. He got lucky with the collisions happening on lap 1 behind him, allowed him to start in P8, but again, it was always going to be an uphill battle for him. It's Latifi, though, for me this weekend. I think it was good to show from him that despite having the worst car, he was able to out-qualify his teammate, also get into Q3, and be fighting in the points for quite a length of that race. So it's a good thing that Tomo is on his honeymoon, and he's missed the Albon poor performance. But very thankful that Albon is okay after being sent to the hospital and everything's fine there.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing to take away from this. It's just good that that all drivers have walked away seemingly like unhurt from anything. Obviously, they've got further checks to do. But yeah, Latifi, it goes to him on default, unfortunately. Like, I reckon if there wasn't a turn lap incident, I reckon Albon would have pipped him in the race. Because as you mentioned, yeah, you know, Latifi has the worst car of the two of them. And although Albon was starting from behind, it's just due to, like, I think in the actual race pace, Albon probably would have had him. So, but yeah, as I said, on default, it has to go to Latifi.
I think actually, I mean, I've slandered Latifi a lot. I might not actually say on default. I think it was actually probably one of his best ever weekends, like right up there with me with Monza last year, which I think is probably his strongest ever kind of race, even though he was unlucky not to score points from that race. It was a really good just weekend, obviously getting into Q3, but then I think the race actually, the pace was obviously not there to get points like Hayden said. It was always an uphill battle. We knew that there was so many more quicker cars behind him. But he was still kind of in that fight. I think once he lost, the DRS probably might have been a bit more difficult. But this is one of those performances where you think, you know, maybe on another day with an upgraded car, maybe he does challenge Magnussen and Vettel and maybe does a kind of funky strategy and maybe does get the points. But these results are just, they're few and far between, you know. Like, this was a good weekend by him, but it's the first of, you know, it's like 2 or 3 that I can think of in 3 years. So yeah, I'm still like, just like Schumacher, it's a good one result, but he is firmly on fraud watch.
It's a good result considering 6 other people retired.
Yeah.
It's not great. Like, this, like, he's not going to come like 18th. Like,
still finished ahead of, what is it, Ricciardo and Tsunoda?
Yeah.
Is he now ahead of Hulkenberg in the championship?
Yes.
Hulkenberg did Hulkenberg
Damn
get
it!
12th or 11th?
He's moved
I thought
up.
Hulkenberg scored an 11th, so I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on. AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly. In qualifying, it was Gasly out-qualifying Yuki Tsunoda. In the race, it was Yuki Tsunoda taking out Gasly. So whilst Yuki did finish ahead and Gasly retired, it was a mistake from Yuki. It's going to go to Gasly for me. Again, I don't think it's too much cause for concern for Yuki Tsunoda. It's good to see that he's on a similar pace as Gasly. They're fighting. And it's just a mistake that the team needs to be careful with. Obviously, he does need to be told to calm down a little bit in those situations, but also not put him down so much a peg that he's now less confident to go racing at all. So, yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Gasly. It's quite a simple one. But, yeah, still a good performance there from Yuki. It's just a shame about the crash.
Yeah, I think it's, I've got to go Gasly. I think they're just running an all right race. That's kind of it, really. It's just kind of all right. And then, yeah, because of the issue with Yuki. And, yeah, we've touched on it already. We don't need to go too much further into it. So, yeah, with this one, it's got to go to Gasly.
Yeah, it's got to go to Gasly. I mean, AlphaTauri would have been double points finish. So obviously, we don't know how the race would have panned out, but both of them were in the points. Both, you know, Yuki attacking, but takes himself out, takes his teammate out, and also loses Red Bull a win. So talk about an L weekend. Yeah, it's got to be Gasly. Even if Yuki Tsunoda qualified on pole, it still would have been, you know, I still would have gone with Gasly, because when you take your teammate out, That's never good. And then you take Max Verstappen out as well, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Right, final team then, Alfa Romeo. Obviously, we had Zhou's massive crash on the first lap. Bottas managed 20 laps before retiring with a car issue. Again, showing that something that we all knew is that the Alfa Romeo reliability, they're good, they're quick, but their reliability is something that they are worried about. It is going to cost them points, but I think it's better, of course, to have that sort of issue than be in a Williams or an Aston where you're not quick, but you are consistent and you are reliable. So for this one, I'm going to give it to Zhou, not because of sympathy, because he had a crash, but he outqualified his teammate. He got into Q3. He was the better driver on Saturday. I do believe that he would have secured points on the Sunday as well. Bottas had a good race. I'm not taking that away from him. He was on the back of Latifi. He was sort of caught up in the Latifi train. Once past Latifi, because Latifi had just pit just before Bottas's retirement. I think Bottas would have been able to move up and been in that fight where maybe Vettel was, or even further where Mick and Verstappen were in that points area. But yeah, Zhou, in terms of comparing the two, I think was the better driver this weekend. But I think we're all just, I'll speak for everyone here, that we're all just really happy that Zhou is safe and nothing really major came out of that crash.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for all of us. Like Zhou, like he was the faster one that weekend. Like he did nothing wrong for the turn 1 incident, and yeah, it's a shame that, like, again, Alfa Romeo's car is just proving to be more unreliable. At least it's showing that it's not the drivers doing anything wrong with it, because when the car does work, they are performing quite well. Particularly as it's like, you know, both the guys, it's like sort of first proper season with the team. But yeah, I've got to give it to Zhou though. Yeah, he was quickest from the two of them when both the cars were working. So yeah, simple one to Zhou, and yeah, glad to see that he's doing all right.
Yeah, definitely. Like the biggest win is that both actually Zhou and Albon are okay. But yeah, it definitely goes to Zhou because like the pace is really good, and it's actually back-to-back weekends where he's shown more pace in the wet, which is very, very good. That's, you know, really promising. He's kind of got maybe a little bit more on top of it in qualifying, which is where he was lacking. And yeah, I think he would have been a points threat, no doubt, in the race. So yeah, frustrating for it to end like that. But again, like he said in this statement, he's fit, he's ready to go for Austria in less than a week's time.
Right, there we go then. That is the wrap-up of the head-to-heads. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching and listening to this Talking Points podcast. If you're watching over on YouTube, leave us a comment down below. What did you think of the race this weekend? And if you're over on Spotify, make sure you rate us 5 stars. We will see you next week when we review the Austrian Grand Prix. Enjoy the race, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.